So I come here as part of Mastercard. Dynamic yield is the set of AI algorithms of Mastercard to predict and adapt to user behavior in real time. So we work with fintechs, with banks, with retailers like McDonald's, where we recommend you which burger to have, and let's say you should have fries or a smoothie with it, and also which clothes to wear when you go to Bershka or when you buy something at Loewe. All right, so where are we coming from? The way we look at this in Mastercard is we have been tracking user attention span for 12 years now. Originally, Dynamic Yield is a tech startup. It was started 12 years ago. I joined 8.5 years ago. And since already for more than 10 years, we have been tracking the attention span of a user whenever they are on any digital surface, be it like a banking site, a retailer, or elsewhere. Now, on average, the attention span in the last 10 years has dropped more than 55%, which means that, of course, users are more and more used to dopamine, right? We're getting notifications. We all have a lot of smartphones, apps that are getting smarter all the time. And at the same time, of course, there are more and more products. So we have fintechs with more and more exotic products, insurances, which are tailored, non-traditional. We have more and more cognitive load and less attention span, right? Now, traditionally, the way this was done was through testing, right? A/B testing. You would start building segments. You would say, this segment of my users might want to see this type of product. This other segment might want to see this other type of product. You would just use A/B testing in marketing to try to be a little bit more relevant, right? You would do this manually. You would build a hypothesis. You would take your campaigns, your products, and you would A/B test it, right? Now, everything changed around 2017, 18, when Google, our friends at Google that were talking before, they released a paper called Transformers that many of you might have heard of. Now, this paper in 2017 was the base from which all modern neural networks have come across. So this is the paper that started delivering on the promise of artificial intelligence. Before, we were doing mostly deterministic models, machine learning models. We were deciding which variables were important, and the model was adjusting them per user a little bit, right? So it was very similar to a deterministic model. Now, let's say what this brought about is that as Mastercard, we have a lot of information about a user. Imagine that somebody is coming, for example, to the homepage of a fintech for the first time. They go to a website. The fintech has 2, 3 products, maybe, I don't know, 2 cards and an account, for example. How do you talk to that customer? We know as Mastercard, on the input layer, we have all the information of the spend of the area of the user. We know the resolution of the phone of the user. We know the atmospheric weather of where the user is. We know where they're coming from. You know what they were doing before in most cases. Now, based on all that context, our goal is that the user actually signs up, or at least tells us what the interest of the user is, which is the output layer. Now, the neural network will take all the data in real time, everything we are tracking on our customers, or everything that we own anonymized at Mastercard, and it will actually change the experience from the very first page view for a user, either on Hype, which is the Italian fintech of the example I'm going to show now, or let's say at Bershka, or Decathlon, or any of our hundreds of customers, okay? Now, what this basically brought about is that before we were living in a world, and many of us still living in a world in which all the experiences that a user would see depends on rule-based segmentation. I'm building rules for a segment, and maybe I'm testing. I am building journeys for this customer. If they do A, I'll show them this email. If they do B, I'll show them this information on the app. This is basically 2-dimensional, right? So what we are working on now is we are using neural networks to build what we call hyper-personalization. That is, show the right campaign from all the possible campaigns, show the one that fits all that data from the customer right now, the moment of the day, all the information, speak to that customer. As if the user was entering a store, you would talk to the user for 2 minutes, and then you would show them something relevant, right? So that is, let's say, the world of hyper-personalization we are entering in. So large language models like GPT are just one, let's say, manifestation of these ones. And this is how, let's say, it's exploding, right? So when we think of one of the applications of these AI models, Like you can, for example, if you want to see an example of how we are using AI and large language models, you can go to the Michael Kors site, and you go to the US site of Michael Kors, and for the last 1 month, they have a shop assistant to which you can ask it, okay, I have a wedding in Mallorca. I mean, what do you think I should wear in 2 weeks? It knows the weather prediction in 2 weeks. It knows when you're asking. It knows your affinity profile. It knows the spend at your area. It's taking all the semantic components of your question, and then it's basically connecting them to any of the products that are available right now in Michael Kors. That is one use of a large language model that we do in Dynamic Yield as part of Mastercard, let's say in order to show the right product, in this case to a retailer. When we work with, let's say, the likes of Hype, the likes of any type of bank, of course, we work in a very different way. When we actually acquire users, which is what we are going to show, let's imagine, for example, that you want to open an account with Hype. We can present this part because they already showed it on one of their events. When you want to open an account and a user is coming to your website, let's say you have very little chances. When you are personalizing on a retailer, there is a very big component of discovery. Let's say many users, they want to discover. If you allow them to run a process of discovery, they will actually convert. They will have a higher lifetime value. When you think of a transactional, let's say signing up into a fintech, of course that is very different in the sense that you need to actually arrive into the page, and then the information on the page needs to speak the way you speak. It should not feel, let's say, too tailored, too personalized, because that doesn't work. But what Dynamic Yield will always do is create our own calls to action. We will take all the information, all the, let's say, calls to action of the marketing department. We train our large language model, and we will even create Hype, not only to test their campaigns, but even build campaigns or calls to action that perform, that could speak to specific segments that we are identifying. And for the bravest as well, we are now generating images as well. So when you're actually showing, how should I show the card? Or should I show a person or not? We are already using, Stability, DALI. There's several models right now that are already doing it. What Dynamic Yield does is we are connected to those models. We feed them the affinity profile of the user in real time, and we generate images and copy that then is shown to the right user. So let's remember that we'll have all the possible variations, and Dynamic Yield's main role is to decide what to show to which user right now. To give you an example, for example, when we work with insurance companies, many times we are working with several insurance companies that want to leave the classic model of agent sales. They had the websites always, but let's say they depended a lot on agent sales before, and we work with very large insurance companies where they want to acquire Gen Z users. They are saying they spend a lot of, let's say, funds on getting, let's say, the first insurance for a customer, for a Gen Zer, for example. Now, one of the first things our model detects is that when you enter an insurance page, there's a lot of redundant information. So up to 25% of the information on a first page view is deleted or is suggested to be deleted by our algorithm because it doesn't fit what that specific user might want to see. And that will already increase the click-through rate by around 17% for the insurance sites. And then you are actually showing the right information, campaign or offer. In the case of Hype, so taking all the components, so making each one of the components of the website, building them into dynamic content, so letting Dynamic Yield choose what is the final presentation, which campaign, which call to action from all the approved ones should be shown to a user, or even changing the layout. Let's say produce quite an impact in terms of like 10% more of users going into card pricing and 2% more from the very beginning going into onboarding. Right? So it's already creating an impact with a script. Now, when we look at this type of experiences, and that is why they were showing it, all Dynamic Yield is doing is placing a tag on that website of Hype initially. It's tracking the user like an analytics tool, and it can basically inject or replace on the front end anything that is on that website. Dynamic Yield already has all the information, all the transactional information of Mastercard for the zip code of the user. So we can use that information to change it in real time. Once they did this, they started saying, okay, we are sending a lot of people to the onboarding. Like, let's say we are sending more users, but not many of them are finishing it, right? So we are showing them a more relevant landing experience But what's happening on the onboarding, right? Now, even if you only have 3 plans, which is more and more common, even if you have many more things, you want to keep it simple. Let's say the way you show it, whether you show social proof or not, let's say whether the order or the benefit speaks to that user, the order of those benefits is extremely important. So let's take into account what is the premise. Why are we working with AI? Because we have more and more content, and we have less and less attention span. Users will usually, I mean, even if you look at these benefits, do you think users are going to read, I don't know, 9, 10 benefits? They won't even read 9 and 10 benefits. So that's not going to work. Making it hyper-relevant, showing less information and the right one, is something that is going to be a mandate. Now, this sounds like something that, let's say, sounds a little futuristic, but we already have, let's say, more than 25 banks in the world doing it. Even before we joined Mastercard, now almost 2 years ago, we already had 5 banks who were doing it directly with our technology. And it's something that is creating a bigger and bigger impact, right? Now, of course, as you go through it, let's say they are moving into the app. Now they're moving into the app. That they will present that in Italy, in Milan in November, so I cannot present it until they do it themselves. Now, the final point is that until now, most of what we are discussing is as simple as tracking the user, taking all the campaigns or all the possible content that we have, all the possible products, and telling the algorithm, just show something to this user based on my goal for that user. So just make it dynamic, hence the name of the technology, dynamic yield. Now, what happened, especially from January, that has shocked even us at the speed at which it's happening, is that we are, of course, like delving quite a lot on generative AI for many of our customers, and the quality and the recommendations of that, let's say, that created content and calls to action is surprising even us, right? So we have many customers who are working with already created content. We already have a beta tester of Sona, which is the video creator of OpenAI, which is quite amazing. And this is something that is growing at a crazy rate. So if you look at the Klarna CEO, last Monday, he actually made a tweet saying that now with almost half the people, he has 3 times the output and like almost 5 times the results. Because he's able to generate, they build all these connectors, and they are able to, let's say, use all this information to be hyper-relevant to the customer. Of course, both images, but also anything like the copywriter I mentioned before. This is our own, let's say, large language model that we feed, and it's giving us all the calls to action, everything that, let's say, could be interesting for a given user in general. So for any call to action that we have, it will generate 2025 and will tell us who wants to see what. Right, so step 1 is we take whatever we have, we make it dynamic, and we remove whatever is not relevant. And that's today. And tomorrow, let's say we have approval flows to actually make the content scale, right? Anything that we are doing, we can even build like movies which are adjusted to a given type of user. When we look at what we are experimenting on with Sona right now for one fintech, we are even thinking of doing only for those that work an introductory video that fits only a very specific segment of users, but it's very, very precise. Because we can just, with a very simple script, generate a lot of videos of like less than 1 minute, of course, which will be extremely relevant to that user, and then speak to them in a way that makes the onboarding much faster and much more straightforward. So in short, I think that the key thing that we need to realize is that the apps are moving. TikTok, Instagram, they are all developing quite a lot of artificial intelligence, and unless we follow them, unless we become hyper-relevant as they are, let's say we risk losing our customer or really seeing all our metrics lag. The opportunity is here, and that's why Dynamic Yield and Mastercard are here to help you if, let's say, if you are ready and you want us to help you be ready. Thank you so much.